Another day, another Instagram caption from Drake. Guys, look, it's been over 6 days since Kendrick dropped that bomb on the Metro Boomin album where he was coming at Drake's throat. No Diddy, all right? And Drake hasn't said a word about this. Like, the only thing he's done is throw up a couple sneak disses on his Instagram captions. He had an angry rant on his tour. Oh, and him and Nav unfollowed each other on Instagram. Now, it's just funny to me that the same guy who called Meek Mill Twitter fingers back in 2015 has now become Instagram fingers. Like, the guy only responds to this diss through Instagram captions. And we're gonna help him out in this video, right? Because it's very possible that Drake wants to come back and diss Kendrick. He just has no idea what to say. And honestly, I don't really blame him because Kendrick has basically a perfect catalog of hits, albums, features, everything music related. And throughout his entire career, he's never been involved in any drama. Like, there's no stain to his legacy. But there are a couple angles that Drake could take where he might get the upper hand on Kendrick. So let's dive into it. Number one, he could kind of come at the fact that, Kendrick hasn't been very active in hip hop for the last almost decade, right? Since he dropped Damn in 2017, the only other project he's dropped was Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers in 2022. He barely does features, he barely does verses, and Drake could kind of tell him in a diss song, like, how desperate are you for attention that, like, you don't drop a song in 2, 3, 4 years, whatever, and the first thing you come back at is a diss talking about me. And he could kind of make it seem like this guy can't, keep up on a commercial level, on a relevance level, if it's not, engaging in some attention-seeking sort of beef, right? This is all hypothetical. I'm just saying, if Drake wanted to come at Kendrick, I think that would be kind of the best approach he could take, right? Just saying something like, this guy is completely inactive in hip-hop. He's been, hesitant to drop albums or projects or features or whatever in the last couple of years. Who knows if it's just because, he's not inspired or whatever the case is. He hasn't been dropping it all. Whereas Drake has dropped 4 or 5 albums in the last couple of years, and he's completely active. He's really trying to, keep that title as number one. One way he could go at Kendrick is just being like, look, you don't rap anymore. And when you come out and start rapping, it's just some sort of sneak diss aimed at me to try to gain some sort of attention and clicks. Like, what are you? Are you Mr. Morale who, stands on those morals and makes empowering music about mental health and about strengthening yourself mentally? Or are you just looking for attention and coming at me and trying to tear me down for no real reason? The other approach I could see Drake taking is basically going at the fact that, there's a lot of footage of Kendrick in the early days of his career really talking about how impactful Drake was in co-signing him early on. Because if you guys don't remember, Kendrick Lamar used to open up for Drake on tour. Before he dropped Good Kid, Mad City, before he dropped his first album, he was opening up for Drake on tours. And Drake also let him get an entire song to himself on Take Care. If you go check out the song Buried Alive on Take Care, that song is only Kendrick rapping on that. So Drake was definitely very supportive of Kendrick early on. And there's a lot of interviews of Kendrick stating how important that support was from Drake.
Shout out to Drake. I sat down with Drake in Toronto. He always said he was appreciative of my music. I always been a fan of his music. Hit me up one day and said, you know what, man, I want you to be on this tour with me. There's a lot of artists out there, man, that could have been on that tour with doing. It's a blessing within itself. So shout out to Tristan.
So, if Drake were to diss him, he could come at him saying, your career might have not been where it is today without me. And not only did I, support you early on, and not only was I a lot bigger than you from the beginning, there's never been a moment where you've outpaced me or, outperformed me. Not any year, not even the years that we both dropped albums in. So that could kind of combat Kendrick's claim that he'll outlive Drake, right? Because on the Future song like that, Kendrick does come at him saying, Prince outlived Mike Jackson, where he's basically implying that he is, Prince and Drake is Michael Jackson. So, Drake could kind of come back at that being like, look, I supported you early on. I was much bigger than you from the beginning. I supported you before you even dropped your first album. And now you've been, inactive for 7 years while I'm still here dropping consistently. And the only way you've been able to maintain relevance or outlive me is by dissing me on tracks. Your work has not outlived mine in terms of mainstream success. And the only way it does is when you diss me. So who's really outliving who here? Now, those are the only two things I could really see Drake kind of going at Kendrick for if he were to make a diss track aimed at Kendrick. Now, in terms of what Kendrick could say to Drake, there's a bunch of things, right? Like, Drake's private life is much more open to the public than Kendrick's, right? Like, we all know about his kid. We all know about the ghostwriting rumors. We all know about, a lot of his relationships with celebrities like Serena Williams or Rihanna. Drake has always kind of worn his heart on his sleeve in his music, too. So a lot of his private lives, whether it's beef or relationships or whatever the case is, or how he's just feeling at the time, a lot of that stuff he airs it out in his music. So Kendrick can kind of use that as ammo, right? He can talk about all those times Rihanna kind of curved him in public or, kind of put him in the friend zone, and how Drake to this day is still upset about that and still raps about it in songs. He can make fun of Drake for, beefing with Serena Williams' husband. Like, what business did he have doing that? He could come at Drake, for having a ghostwriter. How can you claim being the best rapper when you have a ghostwriter, right? He can come at Drake for trying to hide his kid. He could come at Drake for never making an album as critically acclaimed as Kendrick has. There's a lot of things Kendrick could kind of come at Drake for. But the question is, will he come with disses that we haven't heard before? That's the real question, right? Because Pusha T kind of threw every shot he could at him, right? Talking about his parents and their divorce and their absence in Drake's life. Talking about his friend 40 who is terminally ill, talking about, his kid. Pusha T kind of exposed everything on Drake, talking about the ghostwriters. So what is there left for Kendrick to really say that already hasn't been said about Drake? And you already know Kendrick's super meticulous, super calculated, super creative with the way he, delivers his music. So if he really does have a diss track against Drake, or if he decides to make one, I'd be very curious what angle he takes. Now, I think he has a little bit more ammo on Drake than Drake has on Kendrick, and it'd probably be a lot easier for Kendrick to diss Drake than for Drake to diss Kendrick. Still, I'd be curious to see kind of what both of these guys had to say about each other if they put it out in a diss song. But let me know in the comments what you guys think. And do you think we'll get a response from Drake? You think Kendrick really has a diss track, tucked in the cut, waiting for Drake? I guess we're just going to have to wait and find out.